Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Peter Alexievich. This is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. Today, for me, it is just past midnight on Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. That makes this the news for Tuesday, January 28th, 2025, day 1070 of the full-scale invasion. And for any Patreon folks that are here, I am so sorry. God, I'm juggling a lot of balls here. And today's news we are waking up to is a long one, and it took a long time to render today. And so I just sat down to do the Live at 5, and I look, and I never uploaded it to Patreon. Unbelievable. So I'm uploading it to Patreon right now. And maybe I'll actually bring up the PowerPoint and we'll cover what's in there as well as what we have tonight. So anyway, to the Patreon folks, I apologize that they did not get the the news we are waking up to this morning. If you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can get a free Patreon account. Just sign up at Patreon, follow me on Patreon. Free accounts are available. And then normally, under normal circumstances, when I don't walk away from the computer and forget that I'm still rendering the damn thing, yeah, Eli, it was an insane day today, I'll tell you. I literally just walked in the door and sat down to discover that I had not uploaded the news we are waking up to this morning. Hey, Michael, how you doing? Hey, Bobby. Hey, Arn. Hey, Eli. So I'm just... All right, I'll finish. When that upload finishes, I'll publish it on the Patreon. Anyway. So it has... For me, it's been a very busy day from morning to night. And we saw last night, although I did sleep well last night, only one drone came into Kyiv last night. Everything else was shot down, 93% interception rate. 7 drones got through across the whole country. In Odessa, Kyiv, Sumy, Poltava, Cherkasy, Chernihiv, and Kharkiv all saw hits. Here in Kyiv, the hit was on an antique car museum. Because that's the target, right? Like if the Russians are going to win this war, they got to burn up those antique cars in Kyiv. Ridiculous. Just ridiculous. So again, 93% interception rate. God bless the Ukrainian armed forces and the mobile fire units that protect us in our sleep every night here. Now, I have a correction to make. In some of my videos and on the live, we've talked about the Rosneft oil refinery in Voronezh, or Ryazan, specifically, the Ryazan oil refinery. And I have been saying that they process 7% of all of Russia's crude oil. That is incorrect. It is 5%. It is just 5%. But I know it's not a big deal, but I just want to make sure that I'm trying to be as accurate as possible with everybody. The good news here on the Ryazan oil refinery, hey, Chef Deb, is not that I made a mistake about what percentage of overall crude oil they process. No. The good news is that the double tap, the hits last Wednesday and last Saturday that the Ukrainian armed forces made against the Ryazan oil refinery have resulted in that oil refinery being shuttered. Now, look, the Russians are working to fix it, right? 19 of the 22 refineries in Russia have been hit in the last 6 months or so. Now, lots of them have been repaired, right? We believe that with this oil refinery shuttered now, 22%, as much as 22% of Russia's capacity for refining crude oil is currently offline. That means that, where they were processing 5 barrels of oil, they are now only processing 4. That's going to hurt. Given the fact that that the Ukrainians have also burned over 1 million tons of oil or refined oil products in the last 2 weeks alone, it's going to hurt. Red sky at night, Russia's a light. I love that, Andrew. Red sky at night, Russia's a light. Red sky in the morning, Ukraine take warning. The Russians do love an early morning air raid, that's for sure. Now, look, I want to preface this next bit by saying that I am learning about Serbian politics. Serbia was not on my bingo card. It was not a domino that I've thought about at all. Serbia is a small country with a firmly pro-Russian president. And as I understand it, it's the president who has all the power in Serbia. Now, I bring this up because Serbia is now, I think, a domino to watch. And for regular viewers of this channel, right, when I talk about the dominoes, I'm talking about those nations that have traditionally supported Russia that are increasingly moving away from Russia. And I count Armenia as the first real domino to fall, Syria as the second domino to fall. And then who's going to be third is anybody's guess. My money has been on Georgia, Slovakia, or Moldova, right? It's unclear who's going to be next, but we need to add Serbia to that list, and here's why. There have been ongoing protests since November 15th about government corruption in Serbia. Those culminated over this past weekend with a student protest that moved from a strike at the university to blocking a major intersection in Belgrade itself. The students that blocked that intersection were then joined by worker parties that called a strike, farmers that started coming in from the countryside and said that they were striking, and just the general kind of populace of Belgrade coming out to support the student strike. That has now resulted. Now, of course, this all began back November 15th when a canopy at a railway station. Railways are major government infrastructure projects, right? You've stood on a platform. You've stood under the canopy to get out of the rain. That collapsed and killed 15 people. And the cause of that collapse is said to be corruption, poor construction, payoffs, cheap building materials, unqualified labor, that kind of thing. And the people of Serbia are tired of it, it appears. And that happened in the town of Novi Sad, Serbia. The mayor of Novi Sad, Serbia, resigned today. The prime minister of Serbia resigned today. Hey, Bjorn, welcome to the Patreon, Bjorn. Thanks, buddy. Hey, Bertie, I did hear that, but I wasn't able to confirm it. Are you seeing that in the news, that it was Chinese, it was a Chinese company that had the contract to build that canopy? Have other people seen that same thing? I was not able to confirm that. There were some Telegram channels that were talking about it being poor Chinese manufacture, but I didn't have an authoritative source that would confirm that. Okay, so anyway, the prime minister has resigned today amid this turmoil, and it appears as though Tonight, the cabinet is meeting, and they will decide if they will appoint a replacement or call for snap elections, which could swing the tide in Serbia to a more pro-EU stance. But we will see. That again, I would now count Serbia as potentially a domino to watch in this thing. Again, if you're just joining us, because I see a bunch of people have just come in, and I recognize a bunch of you, like Spirit of Ukraine and Arn, as Patreon subscribers. Guys, I am so sorry. I just came in the door. I sat down to do the live at 5, and I realized the rendering of today's news we are waking up to took a long time this morning because it's a long one. And I never published it. The rendering, the processing was, I got doing other things. I walked out the door, and so I apologize. The news we are waking up to is now posted. And you can catch that as you go to bed tonight, I guess. Sorry about that. Hey, Jedi. Now, here's an object lesson for Americans who are interested in American power in the world and our position as leaders in the world. The Afghan Quad, which is a coalition of nation states whose stated purpose is to stabilize the situation in Afghanistan. The Afghan Quad invited India to join them, but India is apparently going to turn them down. Who are the Afghan Quad that are going to stabilize Afghanistan? China, Russia, Pakistan, and India and Iran. Because nothing says stability like Pakistan, China, Russia, and Iran, does it? I mean, really. The Indians don't want to be part of this group because of Pakistan and the long-standing animosity with Pakistan. They don't trust them. It's just that simple. The Quad did have its third meeting at the UN General Assembly back in September. And I think that it's important to recognize that this group would not exist, could not exist, if America hadn't abandoned Afghanistan. If America had not abandoned Afghanistan, we would not have opened up a power vacuum hole where our enemies could go in and try to cater to the people there. And that's exactly what this is. This is a failure of American long-term security thinking in favor of short-term, feel-good international relations. It's a sin, it's a crime, and a shame, in my opinion. That's right, Bobby. I couldn't agree more, pal. He legitimized the Taliban. Trump legitimized the Taliban. He sat down with them. He broadcast to them our intention to leave the country. Extraordinarily foolish on his part, in my opinion. And we're seeing the results, right? Iran, Russia, Pakistan, and China have got their hooks in them now. We saw a video emerge from Chasiv Yar of 4 ISVs, an armored column, attacking the town and being badly, well, there were no survivors. Let's put it that way. Javelin anti-tank missiles were used to take out that armored column of ISVs. We saw the same thing, only scaled up 4 times. So not just 4 ISVs, but, depends on how you count it, but rather 12 armored vehicles plus 3 tanks smashed in Kursk, destroyed by javelins. Now, as I understand it, 1 tank with 4 armored vehicles attacked at a time, and they came in 3 waves, a tank and 4 armored vehicles, tank and 4 armored vehicles. But they got problems in Kursk. One of those problems is the weather. It's 45 degrees outside. What is that, like +8 Celsius, something like that? All that snow that was in Kursk has melted. The ground is boggy, muddy. You got to put your tanks on a road. There's only so many roads. Then you've got these big craters where the glide bombs have hit. The Russians have been firing a lot of glide bombs at Kursk. And these craters have become pools, ponds that need to be avoided by the tanks and armored vehicles. Then you got the Dragon's Teeth fortifications that the Russians put in to protect themselves from the Ukrainians. That meant that there were only so many vectors of attack. And what did the Ukrainians do? They put guys on the hill overlooking those choke points with javelins, and they took out one armored column after another. Now, on top of that in Kursk, we're getting word that the North Koreans have temporarily withdrawn from the front line, at least on the western side of the incursion, to regroup following substantial losses. They are regrouping and awaiting reinforcements. Who these reinforcements are and what their makeup will be. It appears that within the next 60 days, we're going to see gunners, artillery crews, and rocket crews come in to support them, along with Korean artillery. You guys saw the video of those 150 Koksan 170 millimeter artillery coming into Russia, right? Those will be operated by gun crews provided by North Korea, and they are on their way. Other developments on the front line, there's been very little movement, right? There really hasn't been any movement on the front line, except for some small movement on the southwest of Pokrovsk, where intensified attacks in an attempt to encircle the city continue. The commander of the spokesperson for the Tavria military group in Ukraine said that the enemy is fighting smarter these days. We are seeing many small clashes take place up and down the line. These new tactics include apparently embedding Russian dedicated drone regiments. So Russia is now forming dedicated unmanned aerial brigades that are embedded with infantry. Just now, where do you think they learned that, right? That's been the success formula for Ukraine. It is very worrying that the Russians are now copying that methodology. It's a worrying development for the Ukrainians. This methodology has been very successful for the Ukrainians. Should the Russians adopt it, along with their meat assault tactics, those meat assaults could suddenly become far more aggressive and successful. So we're going to watch for that. A video of a Leopard tank in the Kharkov direction taking out a column of a half a dozen Russian vehicles, and a lot of the men on them has emerged, and it's quite a feat. The Leopard takes out all 6 of the vehicles. Now, these were not all armored vehicles. I want to say that. Half of them were soft targets. But the tank does an amazing job. Everybody is confused. They don't know where the fire is coming from. The tank is just able to target the vehicles without being seen from behind a hillock. And it stops the first vehicle, dead in its tracks, and then it just takes them out one after another. They're very soft now. You are not wrong. We got video from the 15th Separate Artillery Reconnaissance Brigade of a HIMARS strike. Get this, I love this for Russia. Taking out a 96-L6E, or cheeseboard, what they call a cheeseboard radar, of the Triumph air defense system. You know what one of these things costs? $200 million, and they turned it into twisted hunk of burning metal. It's an impressive. It's a HIMARS strike, but you know the HIMARS can fire the ATACMS cluster munitions, and I believe that that's what it was hit with. It appears to me that it was hit with an ATACMS cluster munition. And the tungsten balls shred this $200 million piece of radar that can track simultaneously 100 targets for a distance of 300 kilometers. It is the brains, the heart and soul of the Triumph air defense system, which also includes the S-300 or S-400. Without it, the launchers are useless. The launchers are useless. You have no targeting solution. So that's quite a hit, in my opinion. You know what? I will bring that up. I'm going to grab the PowerPoint from this morning's news we are waking up to, since no one has seen it because I only just published it just now. Sorry about that again. Okay, Lithuania and Estonia have committed to spending 5% of GDP on defense. Holy cow. Now, they joined Poland in making that commitment. Poland's already at 4.1% and expects to be at 4.7% by the end of the year. So, or I'm sorry, within the next 3 years. Pardon me, within the next 3 years. And to 5% by 2030 is Poland's goal. Lithuania and Estonia join a growing coalition of European states that are taking their own defense seriously. Now, I'm sure that a lot of this is driven by a fear that the U.S. is abandoning them. Well, with this, with Tangerine Palpatine in the White House, you should expect to be abandoned. What else can I say? I'm sorry. I am sorry that we are purposefully, it seems, giving up our leadership position in the world. Bertie, I would suggest that Poland's military is now probably one of the strongest in the world. It's a good one. Second only maybe to Ukraine and the United States. And I'm not even sure that the United States is first to Ukraine anymore. The job that these guys are doing is we wouldn't even ask our boys to do. We wouldn't. Okay. Is that all the Frontline news? I believe that is all the Frontline news I got. Except for this. I mean, if it weren't so tragic, it would be funny. But it's so tragic, I'm sorry, I can't find the humor in it. The Russians are training their soldiers that when attacked by an FPV drone, they should remain motionless. FPV drones don't use motion detectors. To train your soldiers to do this is out of this world. Or should I say, it will take you out of this world. I mean, Arn, come on, this is insanity, right? It shows a deep lack of understanding. Right, what do they think they are, a bear? They're not bears. There's human eyes behind that. And, look, I don't encourage anybody to install Telegram. I really do not. It is a tool of the Kremlin. It is a compromised platform. Make no mistake, from everything I can tell. And the fact that it is so uncensored means that if you want to, you could spend all day watching videos of these poor Russian bastards just standing still in the middle of a field, as you know, like you said, Fitz, as if they're trying to forestall a bear attack. And the drones just take them out one after another. To teach your people this is a betrayal of the deepest kind, the kind of ignorance that literally will get you killed. I can't understand it. I can't fathom it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, here's some good news. Bobby, you're going to love this, because you and I both know this war is not going to be won on the battlefield as much as it's going to be won in a spreadsheet, as somebody commented on one of my videos today, and I thought it was a great comment. The economics of this war are important. They're critical to the success of Ukraine. And what we see are the effects of U.S. sanctions on India and China buying oil. So there has been the new sanctions regime that Biden announced right before he left office, where he sanctioned those 183 shadow fleet tankers, has immediately been to raise the price of transport fees, because you've got to have insurance. Insurance costs more money. People don't want to deal with you. And so the practical upshot is that it is now costing an additional $3 to $5 a barrel to transport Russian oil. What does that mean? Well, on the smallest tanker, right, the smallest oil tankers are somewhere between 350 and 619,000 barrels. So let's call it about 500,000 barrels. Well, $3 to $5 is between adding 1.5 and $2.5 million to the cargo you just ordered. Whew. You get a big super tanker carrying 3 million barrels of oil, you could be looking at spending another $9 million added to your bill. Well, that makes Russian oil unaffordable when it's over the price cap. So, according to India's largest buyer of oil, they have received no March contracts for Russian oil. No new contracts. They have until the 27th of February to unload any oil that they've already ordered. But there are 0 Russian contracts to the biggest oil buyer in India for March at this time. Something similar is happening in China. We're seeing the bottom fall out of the oil sales to those countries. And it's important to remember that those countries replaced Europe in buying that excess Russian oil that's on the market, since the Europeans are no longer buying Russian oil. It's yet another coffin nail in Putin's oil oligarchy. Russian agricultural industry is short 200,000 workers. Now that's a problem, right? Russia mostly feeds itself. If it can't bring in the harvest, or if it can't get the harvest in the ground this spring, the potential ramifications to both Russia and North Korea. And I think it's important to remember that a large part of the trade agreement, the weapons and food, is food for North Korea. North Korea, we know, doesn't feed itself. And that is done intentionally, right? The regime believes that if it keeps its people starving, they won't have the strength to rebel. That's a real thing. That's a psychotic, self-created famine for the purposes of keeping people enslaved. Obscene. Well, now, North Korea's been pulling all its guys out of the farms and sending them to the factories so that they can make drones and build munitions and shells for Russia. Because Kim is feeling his oats, or feeling his power right now. He really feels important. And he's going to do everything he can to support the Russian war effort. What happens if the current regime in Russia collapses, the war comes to a stop, and the agricultural industry in Russia doesn't provide enough food to feed the Russians? You think they're going to send food to North Korea? No way. North Korea is going to be looking at a deadly famine should any of these things happen. And I don't think that this is an unlikely scenario. It's certainly not definite, but it's not an unlikely scenario. Why is Russian agriculture in so much trouble? Because of the war, of course, right? Because of all the guys pulled off the farms to go to the SMO, because of all the guys pulled off the farms to go work in the defense industry, because migrants won't come to Russia to work in the numbers that they used to, because they're afraid of getting drafted and being sent to the SMO. So Russia's facing a real firestorm of labor shortages between competing industries inside of Russia that's driving a wage inflation cycle that I don't see any way of stopping without serious retrenchment of the Russian economy. And it doesn't appear that Putin has any intention of doing anything but driving the economy forward by expanding his war. That's what it looks like to me. Now, this is interesting. We know that Russia used to be the number 2 weapons provider to the world, right? They have fallen dramatically from that peak. And one of the great beneficiaries is the United States. Last year, 2024, U.S. weapons sales were a record exceeding $318 billion. Right? Nice hit. $318 billion in weapons sales out of the U.S. last year. Record-breaking numbers. The Mirages. France, as you know, trained a bunch of Mirage pilots, ground crew, and mechanics. And their training finished back in December, right before Christmas. Those boys came home, and we were told that the first batch of Mirage would land in Ukraine likely in January. Well, the French foreign minister today said that they will be here before the end of March, so before March 31st. We'll see. So we're waiting on the Mirages. I hope the Mirages don't turn out to be a mirage. Finally, but in international news, Uzbekistan Airlines, Uzbekistan Airlines is no longer routing flights to Europe over Russian airspace. All of the Uzbekistan Airlines flights to Europe will now go the long way around through Azerbaijan and over Turkish airspace to get to Europe. Why? Because the Uzbeks are afraid that trigger-happy Russian air defense guys will shoot their planes out of the sky the way they did that Azeri flight. Nobody wants that. Hey, Nightshade. You just got that, huh, pal? Well, here we are. Okay, last thing here. I want to read to you this Telegram post from Igor Dmitriev. Our buddy Igor here was a member of the Odessa City Council. He was a deputy on the Odessa City Council. And he's a traitor. Like, let's be clear about this. He is a fucking piece of shit traitor who, when the war started, ran to Russia after embezzling as much money as he could, of course. He posted this on Telegram, and I think it is the best description of Russia I have ever heard. But unfortunately, as practice has shown, we do not know what to bring to people, neither in Ukraine, nor in Russia, nor anywhere else. And we cannot influence this. Personally, I have spent half my life promoting, quote unquote, the Russian world, which in the end turned out to be a network simulacrum for supporting gas contracts. So the entire Russian world, according to this traitor to his own people, who left Ukraine and fled to Russia, and since has been promoting a vision of the Russian world, has come to finally understand that it's all an illusion. It's all bullshit. It's all just to sell gas, steal everything you can for yourself, and make yourself into one of the people that owns 99% of Russia. And there's only 400 of them. So I thought that was that. Now that's the translation, simulacrum. Simulacrum. That is a terrible word. It's a simulation, right? It's a simulation for supporting gas contracts. That's what the Russian world is. Now, let me start out by thanking the sponsors of tonight's live, who are Ben Lindback and Arn Arn, I'm sorry, pal. I won't get that right. Okay. Yeah, huge Rob energy. I agree. That is what Trump is. He's an illusion as well. I also want to thank the moderators. I want to thank Lars, who has the Discord server, and I want to thank Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, where all these lives get posted after the fact. So, hey, Big D, you're the sponsor of tomorrow night's live. You and my buddy Chris Carter there. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, other non-binary folks, how do you do? Questions, comments, points of observation. Do you think U.S. will what, Anthony? That's not a whole question. Thanks, Lars. Woo, Big D. Big D, go get him. Big D gets a live sponsorship every month, just like Arn and Ben do, because they join the Patreon at the mother level or higher. And anybody that joins the Patreon at that level gets a live sponsorship. Hey, Leo Ring. This bullshit about Ben & Jerry's. I mean, it's not even Ben & Jerry's anymore. They sold it, didn't they? They sold it to a big manufacturer. So, I mean, the whole thing is just an illusion. The Bali police have started arresting Russians. I don't know what Park Ubud is, but anybody arresting Russians and getting them out of their country, I am completely and deeply sympathetic to. When it finally starts, how long do you think the peace outside will take? I don't really understand the question, Michael. What is the well? First of all, I'm no prognosticator. I don't have an answer to that. Without security guarantees for Ukraine, the peace is extremely fragile. There will be no peace. What's new with Serbia? We talked about it at some length, but just real quick, I'll recap. Protests have led to the resignation of the prime minister, which it looks like will result in snap elections within the month. Did I get the link you sent? I didn't, Big Stevie. I'm sorry. I don't know what you mean. Trump will cause another insurrection. I don't know anything about General Kellogg before he was appointed to the position, other than the biography that I read when he was appointed. The Ukrainians like him. The Ukrainians like him. And so that, to me, is that's money in the bank. If the Ukrainians like him and want to deal with him, that's great. That's a good start right there. Beyond that, -2, I don't know. Jedi, let me come back to your insurrection point there. Unilever, fucking Unilever. Ben & Jerry's is just another cog in the giant wheel that is Unilever. So please, I mean, they're literally as corporate as you could get. Paul, I see. You're surprised that that train full of artillery is able to make it from the east to the west, are you? You're not wrong. You would think that they would try to intercept it, but what are you going to do? You put an improvised explosive device on the track. Those are heavy, self-propelled guns. They're not going to be damaged. Yeah, you'll damage the track. You might slow it down. But partisans, that's a tough one for the partisans. If you could blow a bridge that it was crossing over, that'd be one thing. But since they took out that one bridge on the Trans-Siberian line, which is now forcing the Russians to go hundreds of miles out of their way to get that stuff from the east, the level of effectiveness is questionable. Even if those guns did go over a ledge, it's likely they would survive. You'd just slow down the whole process. What do I think about Trump? I think that Trump is a traitorous piece of shit and a national embarrassment. That's what I think of Trump. You're in the UK, Owls Are Magic? That was £9.49. Or are you in the US? The peace process is not going to go fast. No way. Trump's team has it right. The earliest, the fastest they can possibly get it done is 6 months. And that, to me, seems remarkably optimistic. Remarkably optimistic. Because Russia is insisting on its maximalist goals. It's insisting that the rest of the world go along with all the bullshit lies it has told to justify this war. Well, that's not going to happen. Hello, Sweden. Hey, Cyberdoc. You are welcome, Peter Van Doveren. No, they've stopped making the nuclear threats, haven't they, Anthony? Right? They've stopped rattling that nuclear saber. Right now, they rattle the Oreshnik saber. Ooh, Oreshnik. They don't even fucking have any. What a joke. Yeah, the Kremlin. So this is what I'm talking about, right? Michael, look at what Nightshade says here. Kremlin have said any peacekeepers not approved by Russia are legitimate targets. Well, that's going to be a problem. It was about a Trump Jr. post that was taken down. Taken down from where? Truth Social? X? I just don't know, Stevie. I'm sorry. You're doing TikToks in Spanish, Sam, so nice. Now, Chris Parry here, in response, I think, to Michael's question about how long the peace process might take, Chris makes an interesting point. He says if all the refineries get damaged, it could be less than 6 months. And he's saying that 2 more were hit tonight. Chris, I'm unaware of any refineries being hit this evening. Like I said, I was out this evening. I got home. We went right into the live. So I have not seen the news. Do you know what refineries were hit tonight? Night, Samso. Good luck with the Spanish. Oreshniks are 120 million apiece. Yes, 120 million apiece. The only good thing on Trump's 6-month timeline is that it gives more time for RU economy to die. Yeah, Big D, you are not wrong. You are not wrong. But Bobby, tracks are easy to fix. You're not going to damage any of the artillery pieces. And don't forget that those drones, the drones you're talking about, the ones that carry mines, have a range of maybe 42 kilometers. This train is coming from 9,000 kilometers away. You're not wrong. It's just how effective is it? How many of those $200 million radars are left on the battlefield? Great question, Aiden. I don't know how many they had at the start of the war. So I would have to look that up. I don't know. People have to, for change to come to Russia, the people have to be starving. Now, frankly, that agricultural industry news today from Russia potentially portends the coming crisis. It was a record failure of harvest this year. Crop yields in some cases were down 30%. Things are not going well. And with inflation the way it is, if I'm not mistaken, right, potatoes are up 93%. They've practically doubled from last year. Yeah, it is funny, Anthony, how we don't hear about nukes anymore. Hey, Mike Barry. Nobody is more creative than the Ukrainians, Bobby. Let's trust them. What do you have people who do not know how to... What do you have... I don't know what that means. Okay, so now, Jedi, you mentioned earlier. Yeah, Yorkshire tea, they are, but they're reselling that stolen grain to the world. Right, Russia's a huge exporter of foodstuffs. So this is hurting their pockets, as well as potentially hurting the food supply or the availability of food. So Jedi, you asked something about Trump before, like not just what I thought about Trump, but you said something. What did you say? And I said, let me come back to that. Now I don't remember exactly how you phrased it. But this is what I think of Trump and Putin. Tell me what you think of this. We all know the story of Frankenstein's monster, right? Remember, Frankenstein is not the name of the monster. It's the name of the doctor who made the monster. Though one might argue that indeed it is the name of the monster. So in the story of Frankenstein's monster, which, by the way, was written by a woman, it's generally considered to be the first work of modern science fiction horror. And her husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley, was so offended by the material, he burned the manuscript the first time she wrote it. And that was the only copy. She had to rewrite the whole book after he burned her manuscript. So, in the case of Frankenstein, we have a story of a man who makes a monster. The monster becomes the undoing of the man. It destroys the man. The local villagers then destroy the monster. Torches and pitchforks moments, right? It is my assertion that we would not have Donald Trump in the United States without Vladimir Putin in Russia. I believe Donald Trump is Putin's creation. I believe that he is Frankenstein's monster. But remember what the monster did when it felt its own power. It broke the doctor in half. The monster broke the doctor. I think that's what we're seeing with Trump and Putin. Putin thought he had a monster that he could control. But please, nobody is more adverse to paying their debts than Donald fucking Trump. Right? Putin thinks he's going to be able to get Trump to pay him back for all he's done for him. Forget it. Donald isn't interested. And with his re-election, I think Trump is really feeling the power that he has. And I do not know what's going to happen. I don't pretend to know what's going to happen. But Putin has put himself in a position of extraordinary weakness. The Russian economy is as fragile as a Fabergé egg. The wrong pylon gets pulled out from under that pier and gravity takes over. Something as innocuous as a shortage in the agricultural industry that results in food shortages in the next year and higher inflation for food prices could be the thing that pushes the Russian people over the edge. Or it could be something else entirely. This new virus that's coming out of China, what is it, HMPV or something? Something like that. This new virus that's coming out. Suppose that starts running rampant across Russia. We see a new pandemic in Russia that their healthcare infrastructure cannot handle. That could be the motivate. That could be the black swan event that brings Russia down. We don't know. But right now, it certainly does not look like Donald Trump is Vladimir Putin's lapdog. Not anymore. Did you notice the change in tone from Putin? Did you notice how sweet he was talking about Donald Trump this week? He's kissing Trump's ass. He knows that Trump knows he's got him by the balls. You're not wrong, Bobby. You're not wrong. But the rest of us, plus the independents, do you think the suspension of aid for Ukraine will lead to a total ban? A total ban on what? I don't know what you mean, Jax. Chinese New Year's, lots of viruses spreading. Yeah, it's that time of year, right? I mean, that is the cycle, right? New viruses arise out of the jungles of Southeast Asia. They come up into the population and they spread westwards. That's just how the world works, always has. The EU is stepping up aid for Ukraine. Ukraine will continue aid or no aid. I agree, Bobby. I couldn't agree more. It is a crime and a sin that the U.S. has suspended the Ukrainian refugee program or, humanitarian aid to Ukraine. That is a crime and a sin, in my opinion. But it is important to recognize that the executive order does not affect U.S. military aid to Ukraine that's in the pipeline. If that's what you're worried about, don't be worried about that, right? The executive order does not affect U.S. military aid to Ukraine that's in the pipeline. 62 cases of tuberculosis in Kansas. Interesting. Somebody is dealing with polio. Not in the West, somewhere in Asia. I just saw it. There's like 40 or 50 cases of polio that have cropped up in maybe Afghanistan or someplace like that. Okay, so that was the question, Jax. No, military aid is unaffected. Damn right, Anthony. I'm with you. Oh my God, RFK. The guy had a brain worm. The guy had literally a worm in his brain that caused him brain damage. And Trump wants that guy. It's crazy. Chris Perry is saying here the fourth biggest refinery in Kostovo is on fire. Oh, I'll have to take a look, pal. Right now, the Rosneft refinery in Ryazan is the third largest oil refinery in Russia, responsible for about 5% of crude oil refining. If the next largest refinery, it looks like we see a pattern. Night, Shade. It is about that time. It's 1 o'clock in the morning here in Ukraine. So I'm going to thank the sponsors of tonight's live. Arn and Ben, thank you, gentlemen. Sure do appreciate your support. I want to thank Nightshade. I want to thank Lars, and I want to thank the mods too. You're not a bad person. You're a good person, Bobby. You're a good person. You're just a bad man. Which wallet is yours? The one that says bad motherfucker. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and fellow travelers, thank you so much for your time, your attention, and your patience this evening. Stevie, I'll look for that message. And mushroom burger, salad, and potatoes. You know, they don't call a quarter pounder with cheese in Europe a quarter pounder with cheese. You know why? Because they got the metric system, motherfucker. They wouldn't know what a quarter pounder was. All right, kids, make it a great day. I'll talk to you later.